Anurag, did you really go into the gambling scene in the underbelly and get down to writing this novel?
Yes, I visited a number of casinos across the world and the casinos in Goa several times. One of the things in the casino world is that there are people who win quite often in the casinos. Casinos don't like such people. In fact, in the extreme cases, such people are even banned from entering the casinos. I have met a lot of very sharp people in my life, and I always was fascinated on the trading side in the stock markets. A game which all traders play is poker because poker represents trading very closely. Greed and fear are two sides of the same coin. If you ask a person, I don't think any person will say he's greedy or he will
Yes.
say that he's ambitious. It is only how people act under a specific circumstances and stimuli that shows us who they actually are. When you forget fear, you lose money. And likewise, when you're too fearful because you don't act, you cannot make money. Competition is it's everywhere. I mean, we live in a very competitive world. So either you're highly successful or you pretend to be highly successful till you become highly successful. We deal with moral dilemmas every day in our lives. It's very important for us to first seek happiness for ourselves in our lives before we try and go around spreading happiness. And for that, it is important that we understand that there are imperfections in life.
Hi, in today's podcast, we have with us Anurag Tripathi. He's an alumnus of the Indian School of Business with a course in Advanced Creative Writing from the University of Oxford, Department for Continuing Education, and a master's class in screenwriting from Aaron Sorkin. A keen observer of people, he is a master raconteur who draws on his vast reservoir of life experiences. His debut novel on the art market in India was nominated for the Raymond Crossword Book Awards in 2017. Dalal Streets, his second, was called the Indian equivalent of the iconic Liar's Poker by stock market veteran Manish Chokhani. So we're going to know a lot more about him right now. The Goa Gambit, his third and latest book, takes the reader into the seedy underbelly of Goa's gambling scene. So, Anurag, did you really go into the gambling scene in the underbelly and get down to writing this novel?
Yes, I visited a number of casinos across the world and the casinos in Goa several times before I began writing this story. Um, but basically, the idea for this story came about on a flight to Goa. I had a gentleman who was sitting next to me who was a compulsive gambler and a youngster in his mid 20s. And he told me a fascinating story about the gambling world in Goa. When I inquired further from him, I found out that he was a farmer from the suburbs of Delhi NCR. And everyone in his village was hooked on to gambling. In fact, he told me that on that day in that flight to Goa, there were 40 people from his village who were all visiting the casinos in Goa. So I got very intrigued as to what were farmers from the hinterland doing in the casinos in Goa.
My
And
goodness, that's such a revelation, Anurag.
yes, and
40 people
yeah,
from the hinterlands going down just to gamble. Uh,
yes,
just the kind of men that, our parents would say, just, you better not know such people. Uh, as they say, it's like Jua, right? So, Goa's casinos are such a unique and glamorous setting. I mean, when one looks at it, one sees these beautiful people, and there's that poker table, and somebody's getting lucky. And so, why did you choose this backdrop for your novel, and how do you feel it really reflects the broader societal issues?
so Goa is a very welcoming state. I mean, we have 10 million tourists who come to Goa every year, and majority of them are domestic tourists. So if I had to pick up a representation of India at one location, then Goa was as good a place as any other. And the casinos basically are an integral part of the entertainment lifestyle of Goa. So they represent a subset of the people who visit Goa, who in turn represent the larger Indian mass. So at one location, I was able to pick out a subset. It was a wide representation of the people that we see in India from all walks of life. So that's how Goa came about. And the reason for the story specifically was this gentleman who I had met in the flight.
Amazing. So, it was this flight person who was the inspiration. Does he know about it?
Uh, I don't think so. I have not been in touch with him.
Okay. So in the Goa Gambit, we see a diverse cast of characters from different social strata, politicians, celebrities, and everyday gamblers. So how closely are these characters based on real people or situations you've observed in your career or personal life? To tell us a little bit about that.
So, my personal life, I was in the financial services industry, and as such, I have met a lot of people both on the retail and institutional side. I was managing money for a long period of time for people, and then thereafter, I was on the investment banking side, so I was raising money for corporates. And so I have seen money up close. As far as this specific novel is concerned, which is on the casino industry, I did visit a large number of casinos after meeting this gentleman in the flight to basically corroborate the story that I was told. And when I visited the Goa casinos, I found that actually a good 30-35% of the people on the casino floor looked like farmers from the hinterland. So his story held out. And thereafter, I visited casinos across the world, and my objective was to meet people. I would carry my notebook with me and have conversations and then note down interesting attributes of these characters and the stories they told me. And then I cherry picked the goods and the bads to create these characters. So these characters are very real, though they do not represent any specific individual per se. But these are stories that have come together from real people who have lived and played in these casinos.
So you had a very fascinating career, in investment banking. So how did your experiences in finance shape the creation of Jayesh Shah, the protagonist in your book, The Goa Gambit?
So I have met a lot of very sharp people in my life, very successful entrepreneurs, and when I was raising money for people on the banking side, and I always was fascinated, on the trading side in the stock markets, a game which all traders play is poker, because poker represents trading very closely. It's not only the cards you have been dealt, but you also have to get a feel for the market to see what cards the other person has and preempt their moves. So that preempts what we do in the trading market very closely. So I always thought about a player who was a ace poker player, and I mean that was a fascination, and that's how Jayesh Shah came over, who's been shown as a ace poker player in his past life. And Jayesh Shah is that character for you. I mean, he's good with numbers. He could be sitting at a funeral at the same time counting cards in his mind and having a conversation with the person at a funeral. He's that character. And this was a fascination all along. So, I mean, this is how Jayesh Shah came across. And he's been picked out as the best of the smartest people that I had come across in my life in iBanking and in money management.
So the casino in your novel represents a world of risk and reward. So how do you see this as a metaphor, for modern society, especially in terms of wealth, power, and moral choices, which is, a huge area of gray. It's a very gray area there. So tell me a little bit about that.
So, greed and fear are, the two sides of the same coin. I mean, risk and reward, right? If there were no risk, then everybody would take a punt. And likewise, if there were only risk, then ideally nobody would take a punt. So, these are choices that we make every day in life. And uh, this is basically a check and balance, so to speak of. And this book reflects the choices that we have. I think this book broadly is about all the choices that we make in life. And every choice that we make has a repercussion. So long as we are aware of that. As far as morality is concerned, I think we have ethics and then we have a narrative about these ethics, which is morality. And every time there is a discontent between the two, that's when the dilemma arises, right? So I am more of those people who I understand ethics, but morality is something because it's a narrative. I think it changes with time. Today, what we think is right, maybe we'll be judged on that a generation down the line. I mean, that's what is happening today. So that changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that.
Absolutely, Anurag.
So I don't lay so much emphasis on the morality side because so long I think you can sleep well in the night and you can create a narrative to tell you that what you did was right. That works. And that's my view on it. And that is what has been reflected in the novel. Uh, except in the casino world, we are basically talking about greed and ambition of all the characters. And I think to a large extent, people have related to the novel because these are the decisions we make in everyday life. When these questions come to us, the moral choices that we make, and the justification we give ourselves, of why we made it, so that we are comfortable with our choices. So, yeah, I mean, it works for me as well. My deal is that if you can sleep with it, do it.
Well, that's very debatable, but well, we will take that from you. Speaking of characters, Jayesh Shah, Anton, and Pankaj Adhikari are compelling figures in your book. So, can you tell us a little bit about the development of these characters? How do they reflect, the psychological complexity of people who operate in such high stake environments?
So when I was thinking about Jayesh Shah, and I created his character, the main protagonist, as an ace poker player. I needed to have a very strong nemesis, to ensure that the middle section of the book was entertaining and it kept going. So I needed somebody who was a very powerful character, and that's how Pankaj Adhikari came into play. Now, Pankaj Adhikari maybe is not as intelligent as Jay Shah. He might not be as good a poker player, but he can substantially raise the stakes of the game. So while Jayesh Shah is probably more intelligent than Pankaj Adhikari, but if Jayesh Shah falls, then it could happen that he could lose his life, because that's what at stake when he's playing a game with Pankaj Adhikari. That's how Pankaj Adhikari was envisaged. And then we went into the background to create a political figure who had power, who had the money and the knowledge, and the kind of person who made offers that people could not refuse. So he makes the offer to Jayesh Shah to basically run the casino for him. Anton. So Anton is a muscle figure. Very frankly, when I had written this, I wanted to balance Jayesh on the other side. So Bobby needed somebody for balancing Jayesh, and that's how Anton came about. And then Touchwood, I had initially not written a backstory for Anton, which I wrote later on in the novel, and that gave him a lot more value because people understood where he was coming from. Otherwise, he's a brute. Basically, he's psychopathic. He's the kind of guy who likes to break people down, basically, and gives him a high. And it's a reflection of the kind of family he was raised in, and the time he spent in a foster home and then in a shelter. So he's a person who's come from that, fought his way up, and is who he is today. So that's Anton's character for you.
There's also Ruby. She's one of the standout characters in the Goa Gambit, and her story touches on LGBTQ. So, can you share a little bit more about her role and how did you approach representing her within this high stake world?
So I actually made a visit to Phuket, and I had interviewed a number of transgender characters, lady boys. And when I was interviewing them, I found out that one of the major longings in their life was the fact that they did not get love. They were always exploited, and they were always longing for a companionship and somebody who loved them for who they were. So it was very interesting for me. It was a very strong motivation factor for them. So when I was creating this character, I wanted somebody to run the escort service within the casino. I came up with this character, and the interesting bit I found out in Phuket was that a large number of people don't know that they're dealing with a lady boy when they meet them. They think it's a woman, and depending on who the person is and from where the person is, they sometimes tell them the truth or they don't disclose their true identity. Usually with Indian men, they don't. So that was so we created a character who, in the casino environment, when she came, even Jayesha did not know that she was a transgender, and it was only when she landed in Goa did they figure it out, and then they kept it as a secret. Now, because it was a secret, she was not allowed to entertain customers beyond the limits of the casino because they wanted to maintain that secret. So that's how the character came about. And one of the things in the casino world is that there are people who win quite often in the casinos. These are people, we call them people with superior skills. Casinos don't like such people. In fact, in the extreme cases, such people are even banned from entering the casinos.
Oh,
So,
why? Please tell us a little bit more. This is so
yeah.
interesting.
So, this is because these are people who know the nooks and corners of how to exploit the odds in their favor. The odds of a casino in a specific game are not more than 3 to 5%. So, if you are able to slightly tilt the odds in your favor and play consistently, you will start winning. So these are people specifically playing on blackjack, playing on roulette. They can exploit specific games to their advantage. Now, to win, it's easy for such people, but to remain undetected is the difficult part. So there should be a story of why you are winning or losing too often. And to protect yourself, you need to have a story behind that. That's how Ruby came about because Ruby was known as somebody who brought bad luck to customers. That
Okay.
was the impression in that industry. So when one of our characters loses consistently for a long period of time, the fact that he was with Ruby was reason enough that it did not raise any red flags in the system. And that's how these two characters are put together.
How amazing. This is wonderful. I think this should actually go on to become a complete film. And it's such a racy book, and it's so wonderful. It's so with so many layers. And let's just talk about today's world. With people who chase success at any cost. They're willing to do anything, sometimes at the expense of their own value systems, their relationships, their closest relationships. So, how does the Goa Gambit mirror this? And what message do you hope readers will take away about ambition and the pursuit of wealth, which seems the only defining factor in a lot of human beings' lives?
So the Goa Gambit reflects daily choices that we make in our life. And by virtue of the fact that a casino in Goa represents a wide variety of people who come from different aspects of life across India, different backgrounds. So it's a good place to uh, expose the general people who come there to highly motivating factors like greed, like ambition, and see how they behave under those circumstances. That was my objective. Um if you ask a person, I don't think any person will say he's greedy or he will
Yes.
say that he's ambitious. It is only how people act under a specific circumstances and stimuli that shows us who they actually are. Then you start seeing the chinks in the character, right? And we all have morally flawed characters. We would like to think otherwise. That's the
Of
reality.
course.
We are grays, some are darker grays and some are lighter grays. But to find people who are black and white in today's world, that doesn't happen. So Goa Gambit shows that in reality and how people behave. These are highly motivated characters. And because I was writing drama, and drama is all about conflict and fiction, so I had to create characters who were knives drawn at each other because such were their motivations. So when you get a dozen such characters who are highly motivated with their backstories and bring them all together on one night, with five, six of them gunning for each other, then it creates a lot of suspense and a lot of mystery. And I think yes, it's exaggerated because all that is happening on one night, but it truly reflects the environment that we come from on a day-to-day basis, whether it's our job environment, whether family disputes, especially when the trigger is money, the trigger is greed, the trigger is ambition. Then you see even relationships which from the top seem very healthy, they crack when they are put under pressure on these counts. So that's why I like um, exploring greed and selfishness more, because it truly tests relationships and characters. And that's what we do in Goa Gambit, and I think it's a
Do you
very
do it also in real life, Anurag?
real life. I am also a trader. I trade in the stock markets. And stock markets, greed and fear is a daily check. When you forget fear, you lose money. And likewise, when you're too fearful, because you don't act, you cannot make money. So yes, it's a good check to have, and it the market itself reminds me every now and then when I have overstepped in euphoria, then you lose money, and when you are sentimentally very weak because you're fearful, then you fail to act. So then you can't make money either.
I would be terrible at it because I'm very, very fearful as a person. So let's just talk a little bit about Goa Gambit and the locations that you've chosen. In the book, apart from the casinos, there's also, you decided to look at the different facets of the region. So tell us a little bit as to what made you decide to do that.
So Goa, I think, is a very welcoming state. The people are very nice. The lifestyle is very easy. So when I was describing one of the characters, Louis, with I think Jive playing in the background, and he was making some vindaloo and you know beer can in hand with a Goan shirt. I mean, that's the character. That is what Goanese are. They go easy going. Now, that is the background. On that background, you put these characters who are highly motivated, high greed, high ambition. Then it brings out the contrast. And that was what we were trying to do. At the casino, you saw people where nothing was simple as it seemed. Everybody had agendas. There was an underlying current, and then you juxtapose that on top of a very serene environment where people are welcoming, they're easygoing. Even if you don't have too much money, life is good. People are happy generally. So that was the idea. The idea was to bring out this contrast between the two worlds, the casino and Goa Indian.
So, in your book, there's a strong sense of competition, not just in gambling, but in life itself, right? So, how do these social pressures depicted in the novel reflect real world challenges that people face today, every day, particularly in high powered industries, like yours also? So, tell us a little bit about that.
So competition is it's everywhere. I mean, we live in a very competitive world. I'm a writer. Uh, this is a very competitive world. Or 3% people get published, and there are. I mean, within the 3% people who get published, there's no certainty that you will be successful. Some people are successful monetarily. Most of us are not, especially on the fiction side. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the truth about life. And uh, we have success worship in India and likewise elsewhere in the world. And that's why it's so important to be successful or to portray that you're successful. I mean, both the things are important. Um, I mean, on the business side, I mean, just take examples of what's been happening around us. Why is it that businesses, when they fail very fast? uh, Everything is going well, and then within 1 month there's a complete collapse. And the reason for that is that the person whose business is not doing well also needs to pretend that it is doing well till the time he has no further avenues open to him. That's when the business crashes. That's the competitive world we live in. No banker will give you money if he thinks your business is not doing. So success worship flows from that. We and The perception of success is so important for any business. Doesn't matter how the business is doing, you know, which is the reason that it is only in retrospect that people get to know that a business was not doing well, and it suddenly crashed. Take all the examples of new unicorns or even businesses earlier. I had a story which was told to me once by my father about this gentleman who used to travel only by AC first class back in the 80s. And my dad once asked him, he said that, I know your business is not doing very well. Why do you travel in AC first class? And he says, sir, if I don't travel in AC first class, then all the creditors, including the bankers, will be standing in front of my house the next day. It is to show them that the business is doing well. So
Wow.
this is the world we live in. And I'm talking 40 years back. It's the same today in business. So yeah, it is a hyper competitive world. There is scarcity of capital. We are all gunning for that. And that only comes to the people who are highly successful. So either you're highly successful or you pretend to be highly successful till you become highly successful.
Fake it till you make it.
Yes, yes.
So, what challenges or opportunities do you find in representing Ruby's character and the LGBTQ plus experience? Within this very hyper masculine world of gambling and politics. So, tell us a little bit about that.
So I actually came across this character back in 2017, and I thought I'll be the first person to break this character in India. Unfortunately, this book has come much later. So this character, I mean, we have dealt with transgender characters now in mainstream India, but at that point in time, it was quite unique. And the challenge is, I mean, the challenge is more on researching on these characters, because
Yes.
even there's a taboo associated with it. My wife is a very understanding person. When I went to Phuket to basically deal with these characters, I mean, the only way was to hire them, but you were not hiring them for sex, you were hiring them because you wanted to write about them.
Mhm.
And it was not only interesting for me, but it was interesting for them because they couldn't come to terms with what I was trying to do here. So it was interesting for both of us, and I think eventually they realized that what I was trying to do when I would go back day after day and talk to them. Over a period of 10 days, I was able to thrash out the character. And I found between three, four of them that there were a large number of commonalities. Motivations are the same. There's somebody that, they are taking care of back home, whether it's their mother or child or somebody they are trying to support. And that's why they get into the industry as they do. The sex industry, they exploited there. Nobody likes to be there. You're there because you're playing a bigger part, you're doing something, you need the money and you're trying to support someone. And from there, from the commonalities, we were able to thrash out this character of Ruby, uh, uh, and then bring it out in the novel. And initially when I brought it out in the novel also, a lot of eyes were raised. Um, my um, my first manuscript, I think, was it was toned down a little bit, and some of the toning down that was done was also done on how uh, the ladyboy character was represented, in addition to scenes of sex and violence which were toned down a bit. So this novel is a toned down version of the initial manuscript that I had written, which
How
was
do
an
you feel about that?
yeah. Sorry.
How do you feel about that, Anurag?
The creative side of me was rebelling. Yes, and especially so because I think our world is evolving very fast. I don't think these are taboo subjects anymore. They should be, discussed more out in the open. I mean, go back into Greek mythology. See, homosexuality was a part of life, and then we come to the 19th century and it becomes a taboo, and you can be hanged for it. And now again it is
Yes.
gaining acceptance. So we've done a full circle. This is what I talk about: narrative. It keeps changing with time. So yeah, I mean, things we feel very strongly about today maybe will be just about them tomorrow.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You can say that again and again. Words have also changed, over time. Words that we used in the past very freely are not to be used any longer because the narrative keeps changing, the language keeps changing. So, your Goa Gambit actually delves into personal choices and moral conflicts. So how much do you think readers will identify with these dilemmas, and what does the novel really suggest about the consequences of these decisions?
So we deal with moral dilemmas every day in our lives, and that's what the Goa Gambit shows you. I mean, I say it's the whole novel is about choices we make, and so long we know the uh, the impact of these choices, the repercussions of these choices in our lives, and we are willing to live with it. I think that is what is important. And I think a lot of people have taken away from a lot of characters, though the characters are a little extreme because we like drama and it's a thriller but a lot of backstories of the characters are deep, and I think it has resonated very well with the readers. That's the feedback I am getting from people as I'm going around doing road shows. A lot of people see themselves in those characters, not in entirety, but certain segments. And it has raised a lot of very viable questions of what I would have done had I been in such a situation, or relating to something that they did in their life. earlier, which has found resonance in one of these characters. So I think that way the book has been very realistic, uh, even though it is over the top and it is in the gambling world. Uh, but it has dealt with day to day lives of people, the moral dilemmas that we face every day.
And lastly, Anurag, what do you want the readers to feel as they finish the last page of Goa Gambit? Is there anything that you hope that they'll carry with them long after they put the book down?
I think it's very important for us to first seek happiness for ourselves in our lives before we try and go around spreading happiness. And for that, it is important that we understand that there are imperfections in life. Trying to drive perfection in life is something that will never make you happy. So, acceptance of the imperfection or the imperfect life is, I think, you already there. I mean, you have solved a lot of problems for yourself. And then there are various paths which a person can take. So for me, it is to tell people that you are not the only person who's facing these moral dilemmas in life. We all face them. And so long as we are willing to live with the repercussions, and as I said, we are able to sleep in the night with the narrative we create for ourselves, that's fine. That is life. Life for you. It was never meant to be a perfect life or an easy life. And I mean, roll of dice for me is life, the ups and downs. That's what it represents. That's what the casino world represents in a flamboyance in that. But if you take it back and stretch it over a period of time, that's life for you. It's the daily challenges and the complexities and the people you meet and the relationships that you have with your family, with your friends, and everyone. And then the pressure of performance, of success. These are the things we deal with every day. It's just been showcased in a livelier environment in the casino.
Thank you, Anurag. This was an amazing conversation. Absolutely touched my heart with topics that are so close to my heart. As a mother of a child who's also into investment banking, and I know exactly when you talk about the perception of success, and what is it that they would like to be perceived as. And I always worry because there is such high stakes with health, with relationships, with all of that. So thank you so much for writing Goa Gambit, and thank you so much for being on today's podcast. Thank you for taking out the time.
Thank you, Mohua. It was my pleasure. Thank you.